After playing in the rain to start the weekend, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and Indy NXT took on the mean streets of St. Petersburg, while the O'Reilly Series supported the Cup Series in Austin by whipping around COTA. The Cars Tour kicked off in a big way at Southern National, while ARCA West made their way out to Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway. Supercross carved up the Daytona infield, and our Weapon of the Week segment stands to heat up after an amazing weekend of racing. Hello and welcome to the third episode of Grid Rising. My name is Tanner Smith, an editor of PitboxPress.com, as you can see here. And joining me tonight is my co-host, Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV. Please make sure to read his recap of yesterday's captivating NASCAR Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas on GridNetworkTV.com. First and foremost, want to send a shout out to our Patreon investors, as you can see here listed on the side of the screen shortly. There we go. All right. We got Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and our newest investor, Nico. And if you'd like, you could also give us a one-time donation through Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube Super Chat. And as you can see here, we've got a good list of very generous folks, including Jason M., who has been a multi-time donor to us. So in addition to that, if you are interested in donating to our Patreon and becoming a member of our channel, you can click the link in the video description to be redirected to Patreon. And please make sure to follow Grid Network on all platforms under Grid Network TV. But Matthew, before we start today's show, unfortunately, we got some very unfortunate news today. So I'm going to throw it over to you first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, before we get into the show, we just wanted to touch on a very important figure in the motorsports community, including short track racing, including legend car racing. Chase Pistone has passed away at the age of 42 years old. Pistone was not only a great race car driver himself, but his Chase Pistone Incorporated Legends team was always a threat when those cars showed up to the track. Both his brothers, Nick and Tom, had talked to Legends Nation and requested that they post the suicide and crisis hotline. So we're going to do it here as well. I am going to pull up the graphic here. The suicide crisis lifeline, which is 988 on a phone or text. I'm going to read this for you guys. At the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline, we understand that life's challenges can sometimes be difficult, whether you're facing mental health struggles, emotional distress, alcohol or drug use concerns, or just need someone to talk to. Our caring counselors are here for you, and you are not alone. And Grid Network would like to send our thoughts and condolences to all of Chase's family, all of his friends, and everyone who knew him. So just wanted to put that out before we get into today's broadcast.
Indeed, a very sad and dour moment in motorsports, especially when one of our own passes on to the other side. But yes, definitely sending our condolences to his family. But with that taken care of, we shall be moving on with our regularly scheduled programming. First, starting off in Austin with Circuit of the Americas and the NASCAR O'Reilly Series. So they made their trip down to Texas's capital for the sixth running of the Focused Health 250. Last season's Rookie of the Year, Connor Zilisch, dropped back down to the O'Reilly ranks for a duel with his strongest competitor in the entire garage, Shane Van Gisbergen. The top two stayed nose to tail in their JRM Chevys for the entirety of the first stage until they both elected to pit prior to the stage caution, with Austin Hill taking stage one. 17-year-old phenom Brent Cruz rocketed to the lead on the second restart in a dramatic three-wide overtake on both SVG and Zilisch. After relinquishing the lead later in the stage, Cruz and last week's race winner Sheldon Creed got into a bit of a tangle that sent Creed's Camaro spinning into the stadium section. After a scary crash later in the stage involving Baltazar Leguizamon, there was a mad dash to the second stage checkers as Sam Mayer claimed the stage victory. More mayhem kicked off to start the final stage as Mayer and Jesse Love decided to duke it out in the stadium section, allowing SVG to sweep below both of them, flash them the deuces, reclaim the top spot, and eventually the race win. The win is the fifth of Van Gisbergen's O'Reilly Series career, all coming on road courses. Matthew, while I know we haven't been to a true oval yet this season, and the cars are obviously different from the Cup car, But would it be beneficial for SVG's racecraft on more oval races in the O'Reilly Series?
I think absolutely 100%. I know he's probably the best of all time in NASCAR, give or take, when it comes to Jeff Gordon, obviously being incredibly talented on a road course. Well, even Chase Elliott. But SVG just has something else when it comes to those road courses. Makes sense. He's one of the best ever in supercars, over 80 wins over in that series. But I think even though he puts belt to butt in the O'Reilly Series and even at the Cup level too, and then throwing out the deuces, I thought that was incredible. And it's just so funny that he's so talented that he can just get by these guys and just go like, "Oh, thank you, you're welcome, goodbye," and then he's gone. But yeah, I think it would be really beneficial personally. I know all of us in our Grid Network chat have talked numerous times. Every time JRM or whomever releases their list of who's going to be in the 1 car, who's going to be in the 9 car, 88, whatever it is, we're always like, why is SVG not doing any ovals? And even in the truck series, I know you can't really compare the vehicles, but you can compare being in the seat. So, yeah, it's just, I think he should. I know he does well at Pocono. I know he does well at, I believe, Indianapolis. He's very good there too. And then even
Kansas.
Exactly. So SVG's figuring it out. I would love to see him because he still doesn't have that full 3 years of Cup racing where he could race as much as possible.
The 100 starts, the mythical 100 starts.
Hey, his teammate Ross Chastain does everything possible to make sure he gets as many races as possible in trucks and O'Reilly. I don't see why SVG couldn't. It depends. Obviously, it's a financial thing. But if you're Red Bull or if you're WeatherTech, so on and so forth, whomever's on his car safety culture, feel like you might not do as well. Maybe your ROI is not going to be as great. But to get SVG more acclimated to those non-road course races, he is a legit threat, and he's already 5th in the points. I know it's very early on. But, yeah, if you're SVG at the Cup level, just try to get as many reps under your belt as you can in any type of car. I would love to see him race a truck and win in a truck because then he could be one of like 35, 36 guys to ever win in all 3 series. And he hasn't been here that long, so for him to do that would be pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your take on SVG. I know we get some crap sometimes for our comments about SVG on Grid.
Yes, we do.
But I think SVG is one of the best ever in his respective series where he came from, Supercross. We love to have him here, especially Grid Network. He is a grid ranking champion, might I add that too. But I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, definitely. Got to get some more races under your belt to take belt to butt, as it were. Going to touch on some few comments here before I move into my answer. Obviously, getting a nice shout out here from Joe. Plenty to discuss. Indeed, we do. We've got a comment here from Jason. Shocking to hear the news of Chase Pistone's passing. Obviously, rest in peace. Got another comment here from Kobe of Grid Network as well. Heartbreaking story. Always check on family and friends. Never know when someone is going through. So always be kind and think before you speak because words matter. Could not agree more. And then Joe obviously posting the link to the Lifelines website. But we got Jason here tagging back in. Are the Nopes cars more fun to drive on a road course compared to the Cup cars? I mean, based on what the drivers tell us, because obviously Jason, Matthew, and I have never gotten behind the wheel, even if we were born to race. I can certainly say from the driver's perspective, it certainly seems that they tend to enjoy the Xfinity car or the O'Reilly car. Dang it, man. Only 10 minutes in, it already messed it up. But anyway, yeah, it certainly seems that the veterans of the series seem to enjoy driving those cars a bit more. But to get back to the question at hand here, I definitely think that there is something to be said for, seat time dictating how well you do at a certain track. And SVG obviously spent a majority of his life prior to coming to the U.S. and tackling NASCAR running on road courses. And unfortunately, as much as it seems novel that ovals race differently, it is entirely true. The way you generate momentum, the way that you run your lines, the way that you take care of your tires, the entire racecraft in a stock car compared to racing on a road course is entirely different on an oval. So for me, I think the principles of oval racing always translate no matter if you run the trucks or the O'Reilly vehicle. Obviously, those skills are going to translate. So even if the air moves a little differently in the Cup car compared to the O'Reilly or the truck, you still have those reps. You still have the experience of making those passes, learning how to set them up, learning how to truly get to grip on your car. And I just feel like on the ovals, up until towards the end of last year, SVG still had a little bit of trouble with that. But at the end of the day, the dude is phenomenal on the road courses, and we still have 5 of those on the schedule every year. So those are 5 opportunities where he's going to be the betting favorite to win. Even if this most recent weekend might be putting a little bit of a dent into that. We might start to see, as some of our lovely commenters over the years have suggested, maybe the Americans just need to get better. Well, it seems that they've answered the call. So moving on to our next question here. So let's talk about Connor. So Zilich battled back from brake problems in the second stage to work his way back into the top 5 late in the going, but it wouldn't be for long as Hendrick prospect Corey Day unwittingly walloped Zilich's right rear quarter panel coming out of turn 2, sending Zilich into the wall and plummeting him down the running order. It's unfortunately the 3rd week in a row where Day has been the bat, while more experienced and patient racers are becoming the ball, so to speak, and getting turned off of his nose. And, obviously, I don't think any of these incidents that he's been getting into are intentional by any means, and they're clearly apparent mistakes. But after our comments last week, Matthew, do you feel any differently after the tape this week?
No, not 1 ounce of me. I think, although we are critical, I think we made sure to say that we believe that Corey Day has a boatload of talent, a lot of raw, untapped potential, and it's just he steps on his own foot a lot. And I don't know if he lacks awareness yet in these cars, but that move that knocked Connor Zilich out of the top 5 back to way in the 20s and 30s, and then he ended up being 21st. Nobody passed more vehicles in the O'Reilly and Cup race combined than Connor Zilich did. Man, every time he got sent back to the back, he was coming back to the front. So I don't really think he got a fair opportunity to battle his teammate Shane Van Gisbergen in both levels, really, at Cup and O'Reilly. But, yeah, for Corey Day, I mean, he's got to figure it out, and I want to give him all the credit in the world, the fact that he is still 8th in points when he continuously gets into stuff. It's kind of like if you're playing your NASCAR 25 video game and you get in a wreck, but you can just really get back to the front because the damage isn't really as effective. I feel like Corey Day's kind of playing a video game here, and it is working in his favor. He's doing a lot of things that kind of are reckless in the sense, which are all not on purpose, obviously. He's not intentionally doing this, but it's still benefiting him. So I don't know what's going to happen if he does wreck out when it's finally going to maybe click. It's like I got to be a little more careful. We've seen a lot of drivers over the years with raw talent, ungodly amount of talent, but they can't reel it in. And I think Corey Day is at that point right now where he can't reel it in. Obviously, even his mentor, Kyle Larson, who is one of the best in the world, has a lot of opportunities or a lot of days when he's in the Cup race where he is wrecking himself because he has unbelievable amounts of talent and he just can't reel it in all the time. And when he does, he has more than 30 Cup wins and he's a 2-time champion for a reason. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's the ceiling for Corey Day, but I mean, eventually I think he'll win. I truly will still die on the hill that I believe he should have been in ARCA and at least trucks few more reps and then race him, give him like they did last year, I believe, like 10 O'Reilly races. And then instead of having the Hendrick guys come over to the junior motorsports seats and take that away from Quapple, take that away from Raja Karuth. Now Raja's got to be in the Jordan Anderson car. Quapple had to be in the DGM car, just based on Cup Series full-timers coming down to race. You could have split that with the 17, had Byron in the 17 this coming week at Phoenix instead of him being in the 88. You know what I mean? But then again, I think Corey Day really has a lot of talent. He's just the fishing line's out there. He's just got to learn how to reel it in without stepping on his own foot or falling into the water.
Yeah, no kidding. For me, obviously the results keep being there. He keeps putting himself in position to get good finishes, but unfortunately he's kind of doing that by removing his competition and not in ways that you would really prefer. So, yeah, I certainly think that based off of what we've been seeing from him last year and into this season, he's just too raw. And, obviously I've watched a good number of, the ARCA races from last year that he was in. He had a great run at Kansas at one point last year, but he kind of was his own worst enemy in that race and took himself out of contention multiple times. It's not that the kid doesn't have speed. It's not that the car doesn't have speed. It's just he drives with a bit of a reckless abandon, and then he gets out of the car and he lies about it. Like, that's ultimately what I have a problem with. It's the lack of not only spatial awareness on the racetrack, it's a lack of accountability off of it. And obviously, in his post-race interview, he mentioned that, I had a part broken on my car, and the platform of my car was thrown off afterwards. Buddy, you literally went from the curbing to the other curbing and cleared through Zilich's right rear. Obviously, I know it was a mistake and a complete misjudgment. We've seen drivers at the highest level make these same mistakes. Kyle Busch at Darlington to Chase Elliott in 2020 is a prime example of that. We've all seen drivers make misjudgments. But when it's compounding like this over and over again, week after week, Kyle Busch was not doing that week after week in 2020, even though he wasn't winning races like we normally saw him do at the time. It just begs the question of, is this kid really ready to tackle the top, well, not the top, but the, even second tier division of NASCAR competition? And frankly, I'm starting to get a little bit more concerned. And he isn't exactly showing a whole lot of promise in his limited starts last year on the ovals, and they're not really putting him in a position to get more seat time like we just talked about with SVG and the other series. So it just begs the question of, why are you putting this much funding behind this kid and not supporting him properly? And I think a lot of it just goes back to Rick Hendrick has kind of outsourced his driver development pipeline to JRM and Spire over the past couple of years. And now that they have a legitimate prospect that they're trying to take interest in, it just seems that they don't have any clue about how to go about it in a proper way. I hope that changes, but it just makes you question why they put someone who's so unproven and raw into this seat, at least in asphalt driving. When you had someone like Raja Karuth, who already had truck victories, had extensive experience in full-bodied stock cars and stock trucks on asphalt, it just makes you question a lot of decision-making coming from Hendrick Motorsports. Before we dive into our final question here, we're going to hit another couple comments here. Joe obviously tagging back in. SVG should consider the Bristol O'Reilly Series race. That oval, he just struggles. I could not agree more, Joe. He needs so many more laps around Bristol in order to get himself cleaned up. Jason coming back in here. Is Sage Karam still a threat in road courses or not a factor anymore? Was he? I mean, I guess there was that one Road America race where I think he was in a Sam Hunt car. I think it was 2024 Road America no, it was 23. They didn't race there in 24. where Sam Mayer ultimately pulled it off, but Karam was in the mix. But I just don't think that he is in the car enough to really compete every week. Not only that, I mean, COTA isn't really a track to me that IndyCar goes to very often. I think they've only been there the one time in 2019 and haven't been back since. So even then, Karam doesn't really have the experience level at that racetrack to warrant, a very strong ride. But Matthew, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I don't know if Karam's been a legit threat, but I really wish he was. And I love the idea. I think they even touched on him on the broadcast about how this really isn't something he does. He just kind of has his helmet on him, and if he can get the funding, he's going to go out and race. And I respect that about Sage Karam. I'd love to see him contend, but he was he in a Joey Gase car? He was in a Toyota, I believe, this past.
I
Was it the
think
53 or 55, something like that? But he just had an unfortunate error. But yeah, like Jason says, I wish he was more of a threat, but he really hasn't been, and I don't. The Sam Hunt equipment's not really top tier either when he was in that. Now, if he could somehow get if he stays with Toyota, if he could somehow get a Joe Gibbs racing ride in an extra car, he'd have to have a lot more funding to do that. But I think he could legitimately compete at one of the tracks. And IndyCar should go back to COTA. COTA is one of my favorite tracks, in my opinion, and I would love to see that have Formula One, MotoGP, NASCAR, and IndyCar. And I believe that was one of the answers to one of Joe and I when we did a trivia type name seven tracks that all the sports have competed at. COTA was one of them. So that's my thoughts on Sage Karam.
And just to clarify, he was driving for BJ McLeod through Joey Gase, if that makes sense. It was, I guess, a car built by Joey Gase's team, but BJ McLeod got the nameplate for it. And Jason also mentioned that Alex LeBay, 13th, big shout out for that team. Very impressive performance. And then finally from Jason, a question that we didn't even have in our doc, but is William Sawalich on the hot seat? Matthew, you want to tackle this one first, or you want me to do it?
No, I don't believe he is. I think Williams.
I mean, his car was beat all to heck, and he still got 7th. I mean, I don't really know what more you could have asked of the kid with that kind of damage on the car and those two guys in the field.
And especially, he almost beat out his teammate Brent Cruz. I think Toyota, especially once William Sawalich figures this out, I think he might have been in the O'Reilly Series maybe a little early. I think I would have liked if he got more truck starts. I know we put belt to butt every time out in ARCA, but for him, he was still young. I think once Sawalich figures it out, and I'd say the same thing with Brent Cruz, I think those guys are both going to win this year. I really do. That's my hottest take. I think both Brent Cruz and William Sawalich find victory lane in the O'Reilly Series. I'm confident, and then plus the funding wise, with Sound Gear and Starkey, Sawalich really isn't going anywhere unless the money wants to bring him elsewhere, pretty much. But he's been with Toyota for as long as I can even remember. So I think a lot of the Toyota guys usually stay loyal to Toyota unless a lot of stuff comes their way, like a lot of money comes their way. Obviously, Jesse Love, that's an interesting case if he's still with Toyota in some way, shape, or form. If he's going to go back to Toyota next year, we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, I'm interested how you feel about Mr. William Sawalich.
Yeah, obviously had a very, very tough rookie season last year I can call it the Xfinity Series if I'm referring to it in retrospect. But he definitely flashed some promise at certain points throughout the season, had that strong third-place run at Sonoma where he was the third banana to SVG and Connor. And, obviously Cruz came in yesterday in his very first start and performed very admirably. We're going to get to that. But at the end of the day, William Sawalich is still only like 19 years old. A lot of tread still left on that tire. I think it's a little too early to be, calling the dogs on him when, let's see, where has he finished thus far this season?
only gotten better. He didn't start out very hot. Well, Joe Gibbs Racing didn't start out very hot. I think every single
no, he got in the DVP in Daytona, and in Atlanta he kind of was mired in the mid pack, finished 23rd. Not a great run that day either, but obviously at COTA had a pretty solid day, all things considered, with all the damage on the car. And it was his worst qualifying effort of the season. So to be able to claw back from not having a good single lap car and having damage to it, I'd say that's a pretty good result. Finally, before we move on from this pretty long section, did you have any thoughts on Brent Cruz's debut? Obviously, I know that you mentioned he is, someone that's high up on your radar, seems to be high up on JGR's radar. So I was just wondering how you felt about how he fared in his first start.
I didn't expect any less for him to come out and finish sixth. Brent Cruz is truly an incredible talent. I still believe deep down I might be higher on him than some people, but I think he can still legitimately have a shot at making the chase despite missing 4 races. I think that's how much talent Brent Cruz has, and then with Toyota funding, and then the best friend group there with Connor Zilch, Jesse Love, Brent Cruz, all those guys being such good friends. The fact that they all have unbelievable talent and all of them can either be a champion in this sport or are already a champion in some way. Obviously, Jesse Love being an O'Reilly, at the time, Xfinity champion. But, yeah, Brent Cruz coming out and finishing 6th. I don't know if he led any laps. I'd have to check that out, but had a pretty good day. He only had 31 points. Obviously, that's a product of flipping the stages, not really getting as many stage points. But, yeah, this kid, I'm telling you, I really do believe deep down that he can make a run. I think he's going to win at least one race this season, and I think he is going to have a legit shot at the chase. Looking down in the standings, he is 28th, but that's after him only doing, one race, because he's still too young. And it was something like the youngest race car driver in the O'Reilly Series since 1998 or something like that, obviously the way the rules have worked. But he's turning 18 soon, so I think he's going to do great things.
Was he the youngest since, Adam Petty? That who it was?
I'm going to have to look that up while I throw it over to you.
I think that Casey Atwood entered an O'Reilly race when he was 16 in 96 or something like that. Set on the pole, by the way. Yeah, Casey Atwood. I know that he didn't end up having the brightest Cup career that we all thought he might, but he was quite the driver when he was coming up, and I think that his failure at the Cup level was more influenced by Ray Evernham being incompetent as a car owner than it had anything to do with Casey. But with that said, let's talk about a current 19 in Brent Cruz, the 17-year-old. He has been on my radar since 2020. He got picked up pretty early on by Kevin Harvick's agency, and the kid's been tearing up the late model scene. I believe he got a few cars towards victories last year. He's shown a lot of savvy, a lot of promise, even moved Butterbean out of the way at Phoenix last year to claim a victory there. The youngest TA2 champion. He is just absolutely, ripping through the development ladder at a pace that's very reminiscent of his friend Connor Zilch. So definitely going to keep my eye on him. I think that it's pretty much an open secret at this point that he is the one that's been earmarked for the 11 car once Denny Hamlin decides it's time to go. So very excited to see how he performs this year. I think, it'll be a learning process for him. I mean, just a kid, literally just a kid, but got a lot of speed, and he's also relatively a clean driver. So it was nice to see him, take some hits from Austin Hill and Sammy Smith yesterday and, keep on swinging out there. So it'll be interesting to see how his rookie year continues to play out. But that's enough for COTA. Let's move on to the Craftsman Truck Series as they made their initial street course race at St. Petersburg, Florida for the inaugural running of the Only Bulls Green Flag 150. Because the O'Reilly and Cup teams were Austin bound, the Truck Series chose to have teams do untimed pit stops during the stage breaks. After a daring turn one, lap one pass to get to second, Ben Rhodes sprinted by Connor Mozak, the pole sitter, on his way to a stage one victory. On the stage two restart, the two-time series champion held the lead over a field of hungry drivers. Unfortunately, the second stage didn't end up getting off to such a great start for Tricon's Caden Honeycutt as he overshot turn four, but that wasn't the end of his day by any stretch. He later rebounded to finish fifth. On fresher tires, Lane Riggs executed a daunting three-wide maneuver over Gio Ruggiero and Connor Mozak to move into the top five. Just as that happened, though, championship contender Christian Eckes, in what ended up being a very tumultuous day for him, found himself in an accident with Adam Andretti and Daniel Hemrick. Now, if there was any question that Front Row Motorsports owner Bob Jenkins enforces team orders, those questions were thoroughly answered at the conclusion of stage two, as his drivers Chandler Smith and Lane Riggs fought very hard for every inch against one another, with Riggs eventually eking by to take the lead and the stage victory. On the final stage restart, Ty Majeski, the 2024 Series champion, broke up the front row party by slipping past Smith before a Derek White caution brought the field back to a crawl. When the trucks fired up once again down the airport runway, Majeski attempted to jump alongside Riggs, but the 34 squeezed the 88 through turn two, allowing Riggs to scamper away until the sixth and final caution flew for a stopped vehicle. On the final restart, Majeski pinched Riggs down the long front straight and used the extra tarmac on the outside of turn one to generate a better run. The momentum propelled the 88 to the lead and what looked to be certain victory for the Chi-Chi's Menards machine. Just as the trophy appeared to be in sight for the first time all race, it was not to be for the former champion, as Majeski missed his braking point heading into the final turn with 19 laps to go, sliding off track and dropping him down to seventh. Majeski, to his credit, though, put on a furious charge to re-enter contention, but he ultimately fell just short as Lane Riggs scored his first win of 2026, with Majeski, Rhodes, Smith, and Honeycutt filling out the top five, and Landon Lewis, Andres Perez de Lara, Daniel Hemrick, Colin Brown, and James Hinchcliffe rounding out the top 10. Matthew, what are your overall thoughts on the very first street race for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series?
I loved it. I'm a big road course guy. I'm a big street course guy. And just to see the trucks be able to go there and then kind of have somewhat of a partnership in a sense with IndyCar, just to show that our fan bases in NASCAR and the fan bases in IndyCar really can get along for some incredible racing. And the trucks there, it put on a show. I was listening to a lot of it on the radio, and then especially when Ty Majeski overshot that braking point, went from first to sixth, and then he just stormed right through the field. So Majeski was one of the cars to beat, or trucks, I should say. But Ford, I mean, Lane Riggs, Majeski, Rhodes, and Chandler Smith put on an absolute show. And then, like you joked about with the FRM, there was definitely no sort of team orders. Those guys were beating and banging against one another, and it worked out in favor of Lane Riggs. And I know he was having issues too, whether it was a fuel pump, something was going on, where he really wasn't a huge threat until the second stage, and then he kind of took over. So something about those short track racers like Riggs, Majeski, guys like Chandler Smith, Landon Lewis up there, know how to race these street courses pretty well, which is fascinating to me. But yeah, I loved it. I would like to see him go back. It depends on, I guess, would you keep just trucks and then leave O'Reilly and Cup at COTA? Would you bring O'Reilly there too? I like the idea of having it as a partnership with IndyCar. I know Pato O'Ward made some comments saying he doesn't want to be, I don't know what his exact words were, but
I think that had more to do with next weekend's racing. But yeah, I think I know what you mean about him talking about we don't want to be a support race for somebody else. And I mean, I can't really say I blame him for that, but we can get to that later.
No, I get you. And I couldn't think of what he said, but support race. And then kind of looked at it, it's like, why is he saying that when IndyCar technically had the trucks were the support race technically of IndyCar this weekend, but then obviously heading into Phoenix, it seems like the opposite. So yeah, I love the event personally. I don't know what they can do to maybe improve it, but there really wasn't as much chaos until usually the chaos would start if somebody threw a late block or if somebody just missed a corner, and then all of a sudden they'd all pile up. Very surprised. I want to shout out Daniel Hemrick. I'm pretty sure he got involved in a few of the incidents, and he still managed a top 8 finish. And I think everyone, even Colin Brown, almost hit the wall. James Hinchcliffe spun, pretty sure. Everyone had damage. I know Landon Lewis had some damage on a block on Tyler Ankrum, ran right into the back of him, and he still finished 6th. So, and Caden Honeycutt, you mentioned. So all those guys had damage. So I guess from that sense, if you want to cost more by bringing damaged race trucks back to the shops in Concord, Charlotte, Mooresville, wherever they are, then you keep racing here. But I like it personally. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I don't know if you're a big street course guy or not, but
yeah, so obviously, was definitely feeling very ambivalent about this whole experiment with the trucks moving to St. Petersburg. But, the more I thought about it over the off season, once the lawsuit and all that got settled out and I could actually think about things, I was, warming to the idea, because it used to be that the truck series often used to support IndyCar events in its infancy. And it was really cool to actually have this weekend end up the way that it did. I honestly like seeing more races, or I should say race weekends, where the trucks in the O'Reilly Series do not have to be tethered to the Cup Series. I think that it holds both of those series back, that they don't have their own identity right now. And this was a very good way for the trucks to, in essence, have their own identity by kind of chasing something else. With that said, I think it's better that we had this street race incorporate the truck series first, rather than, basically letting them be the guinea pigs of the Coronado Naval Base street race that's going to be coming up here in June, where all 3 series will be taking on the San Diego Naval Base. So with that said, I came into the race with an open mind, and I ended up enjoying it. I'm glad that NASCAR has continued to be pretty hesitant with the yellow light button this year, and that continued over all 3 races this weekend, when it really wasn't, when there really wasn't a threat to be found on the racetrack. So all that said, I thought the race was very compelling and didn't get marred too much by cautions. Obviously, you would like to see live pit stops, but if that's just not possible because of, constraints and how things just work out, oh well, I get it. But at the end of the day, I don't think it affected the racing product at all, and overall thought the trucks put on a great show. With that said, it looks like Jason definitely enjoyed the truck race at St. Pete, so glad to see we weren't the only ones. But moving on to our next question, we saw a fair amount of crossovers this weekend, with James Hinchcliffe and Dario Franchitti finding speed on familiar ground. Matthew, would you like to see more crossovers from stars of other racing series in NASCAR's National Series?
absolutely 1000%. There is nothing I am more certain of in my fan base views on the sport. I love the idea of bringing superstar talents, or just very good talents, from whether it's former Formula One drivers, former IndyCar drivers. Hell, we can even get a MotoGP driver in there. I don't really care. If any of them want to come over and race, I'd love to see it. It's so awesome because it brings another perspective. And I mean, both Hinchcliffe and even Dario Franchitti was running really, really, really well. I think he's 52 years old. Not bad. I know the Tricon truck's probably the best in the field for Toyota, but for him to go out there, and he was running really in the top 5, top 6, and then all of a sudden he was on pit road, and then next thing you knew, he was in 27th, and he finished a lap down. So for him, it was awesome to see. I loved when even Catherine Legg came over to race a few Cup starts. When we had Elio Castroneves, one of the best to ever do it, come race. We saw Kimi Räikkönen race in the Cup Series. I love to see it. And it's just such an awesome thing to have these superstar talents come over. Sorry, I'm getting sick, as you can tell, or getting over something, so that's why my voice is more annoying than usual. So I apologize, but yeah, when you have these superstar talents coming over, it expands the audience, and that's really what I think NASCAR needs to focus on. And I'm interested. I don't believe any race or any Cup guys or O'Reilly guys or anything are trying the race in the IndyCar race, and I don't really think any IndyCar guys are doing double duty with Phoenix either. That's an unfortunate thing. Hopefully, if that partnership continues, maybe we see something down the line. And we didn't really see any full-time IndyCar guys race the truck race either. It would have been cool if someone like Connor Daly, who has NASCAR experience, Santino Ferrucci, I know his race really didn't do well, but he's got some starts in the O'Reilly Series. I believe it was with
Carum.
See, exactly. Everything connects back to Sage Karam. But just somebody, unfortunately, he was in COTA. But yeah, it would have been really awesome. But I love to see it. Project 91 was one of my favorite things that I've seen in the sport since I've been paying attention. That's obviously how we got Shane Van Gisbergen. One of my first ever NASCAR journalism stories I had written was 5 drivers I'd love to see with Project 91, and this was back in, I believe, 2022 when it was announced. My number one guy on that list was Shane Van Gisbergen, so it was really awesome to see. I think I had other Formula One guys on that list too, but none of them have obviously come over. But I would really like to see more Supercars guys as well make that crossover. Cam Waters, Brock Feeney, Will Brown, all those guys. So that's my long point about that. How are you feeling about getting some superstars to come race in NASCAR? Because we don't really send anyone else there, anywhere else, really.
Well, before I do that, I do want to touch upon Jason's comment here. Obviously wants to see Joe New take on the Brickyard, and I just referenced it, and it looks like IndyCar is off that weekend. Could be fun.
Little Scotty,
fun. Yeah, maybe a little Scotty Mac action, Scotty Maction, if you will. Yeah, I would love to see that. Will Power maybe even get behind the wheel of something. I would love to see that. Maybe get Alex Palou in a car. I don't know. I think we're getting a little too outside. But all that to say, I'm very receptive to that idea. I am the one that wrote the question. And yes, let me tell you, I would absolutely love if more drivers were able to cross over. I will say I think that in both NASCAR and IndyCar, and obviously Formula One, since they have the, we'll call it, structure of chartering teams and stuff like that, I do think at the very highest levels of those sports, it does make things a little bit more complicated than just, oh, we're just going to go throw a guy in there. That said, I feel like, even if there is a risk of missing the race, God forbid, I just think I'd like to see some more of these elite talents and all these other motorsports come over here and go give the we'll call it the motorsport equivalent of football a shot. We definitely welcome any and all competitors to see if they can get in the full-bodied stock car and, duke it out with the best of them, or even the stock truck for that matter. But with all that said, definitely would welcome more, we'll call it crossover between all racing series. And we got a comment here from Joe. If Aston Martin is as bad as McLaren and Honda were, maybe Alonso will come to an IndyCar weekend. Hey, don't tempt him with a good time. Yeah, hoping that the Aston isn't as bad as people are saying it is, but it's too many people talking about it. So got to believe it's pretty bad. With that in the rear view, though, Matthew, we're going to talk about one of your more familiar folks. So, for those that don't know, Matthew worked directly with motorsports star Lyndon Lewis when they were both involved in the Team Hornaday driver development program. So, Matthew, I feel like this weekend's result may come as a bit of a shock to many that are more familiar with Lyndon Lewis's work in, short track racing. Obviously, he's done a good few starts on the Cars Tour and had a bit of success there and around the country. So what do you see in Lyndon Lewis that makes you think he will be a star we'll watch for years to come?
Just I mean, everything about the kid, Tanner. And I want to pull up a photo here from David Jensen of Getty Images just to show that is Landon Lewis's number 45 machine from Nice Motorsports. So once again, shout out David Jensen for that image. But yeah, when I started with Team Hornaday Development, Landon was more getting signed. Sorry, my computer's going off. When I started with Team Hornaday Development, it was when Landon Lewis had gone to sign with Kevin Harvick Incorporated and KHI Management. But even texting with Landon, you could text Landon and say, hey, congrats on the Cars Tour victory, which he won many of those Cars Tour events. He'd always make sure to get back to you immediately, say, hey, thanks, man, really appreciate it. So Landon Lewis is just an incredible kid, not even just an incredible race car driver. And I was texting you guys in the group chat, our Slack chat. You guys were like, hey, how's Landon going to do at St. Petersburg? I said, the kid can race on road courses, whether it was he did a low country motorsports race at Sebring with Isaac Kitzmiller. Both of them did really well for their first times in an endurance style race. But Landon Lewis is a multi-time champion in the legend cars. In anything you could imagine, he was a dirt champion. He's an oval champion. And he recently just won, I believe it was like his 4th or 5th road course championship. So the kid can race. Landon Lewis is truly an incredible talent, and it's just so awesome to see him be where he is. And I mean, people forget a few years ago, he has 3 ARCA wins under his belt, whether it's an ARCA Menard Series race or ARCA West, on dirt, on a road course, and I believe, was it 2 road courses? I'm trying to think where he has won. He has won so he's won on an oval, he's won on dirt, and he's won on a road course. So Landon Lewis is a prime example of if you put the kid in a car, he's going to do well. He has a dirt background, he has a legend car background, which he has said is one of the hardest things to drive out there. So always a great thing for that. But yeah, Landon Lewis is truly with Nice Motorsports. I think if he can continue to do well, he scored 47 points in his truck debut for the season. He's done some truck races before. He is actually the last driver to race for Hattori Motorsports, too, as a substitute driver. Back at Martinsville, I believe it was either last year or 2 years prior, too. But Landon, I mean, he's got some seat time. Obviously, Cars Tour champion for a reason, and he's got that JL Electric team there with Nice Motorsports. They're ready to go. So I would expect Landon Lewis to, not even from a bias perspective, I just expect that kid to contend. Once he figures out the ovals on a truck, I think he's going to be a very successful guy. And I see him winning a race in the next maybe 2 or 3 seasons if he stays with it. So that's my thoughts on Mr. Lewis. He's still young, too. Got a lot of time to keep racing.
Mr. Lewis.
Yeah.
We got a comment here from Jason. I like Lewis, and hopefully he earns some good opportunities. And I couldn't agree more. I don't really have a whole lot to add here because I'm not as familiar with his game, but obviously he did go out and absolutely throttle the field last year at North Wilkesboro, and the Cars Tour got to be shown on Big Fox, and that was a big moment for him and the KHI team, who, again, another Kevin Harvick prospect. Who's surprised? But anyway, yeah, I mean, I was certainly pleasantly surprised by the run. I haven't thought that Nice's program was quite where it needed to be over the past year or so since Hocevar left. But I think if they put their eggs in the Landon Lewis basket, I think that they may have their next, Cup Series prospect lined up after, obviously they have Ross Chastain as somebody that got in their development pipeline and so forth. So, yeah, definitely a good environment for him to be in. I think a team that knows how to win races and compete for titles, giving him a limited schedule this year to get his feet wet in the series. I think that if they end up going to a short track or two with him in the truck, he's going to be a force, and he's going to contend with the series regulars. So really looking forward to seeing the slate that he's got ahead of him this year, and looking forward to hopefully him having some opportunities in the near future. But with that in the rear view, let's move on to the other support event that took place at St. Pete with the Indy NXT series. So some lap 1 drama spawned in the midfield as HMD Motorsports' Jack Beaton went for a spin and collected AJ Foyt driver Alessandro De Tullio, bringing out the first caution. After that, you had Chip Ganassi Racing's Carson Etter hitting the turn 8 wall before finishing the job in turn 9 after his front wing slid underneath his wheels a few laps later. Not long after, we had another Foyt driver in Nicholas Montero finding the inside wall, then the outside wall of turn 9 before another caution fell on the next restart for a collision between CGR teammates Niels Coolin and James Rowe. Initially scheduled to be a 45-lap affair, the excessive caution saw the race reduced to a timed event. But the race seemed over from the get-go as pole sitter Nikita Johnson led wire-to-wire en route to the 17-year-old's first series victory in just his 4th career start. Andretti Global's Max Taylor and I'm terribly sorry, sir, I'm likely to butcher this, but Tomek Kucharczyk joined Johnson on the podium. Matthew, I know that you have a little bit of experience with Nikita Johnson, so what do you got to say about his victory?
The kid is incredibly impressive. I never, unfortunately, got to work with him firsthand, but fun fact about him, do want to pull up a little bit of an image, how I put so much of an emphasis on specifically short track racing and legend car racing. This is a graphic from 2021 from Joe Ryan Race Cars, the same organization that brought you the talents of Landon Lewis, the talents of Jesse Love, and other incredible race car drivers. So Nikita Johnson is a road course world finals champion, and I found the post 225 weeks ago, Tanner. Shouted out Joe Ryan, Candace Hornaday, Billy Workman, Ron Hornaday, Austin Terrio, and Bell Racing. Just the kid is an incredible talent, so it was pretty cool to see him when he posted, obviously following all those people that I work with, all of them saying, hey, congrats, Nikita. So it was pretty cool to see him come out. And it shows how important legend car racing is, Tanner. You can go future Cup stars, maybe guys like Brent Cruz, guys like Jesse Loves.
Wallace.
Yes, exactly. Bubba Wallace also races Joe Ryan race cars at the summer shootout. Scotty Mack, Scott McLaughlin, and Shane Van Gisbergen also got behind the wheel. I believe Brexton Bush as well had some affiliation. Kyle Busch. Just working with Joe Ryan is a guy who knows how to find the talent, builds incredible race cars. Landon Lewis also builds some of the race cars over there with Joe Ryan race cars. Might not as much now with Nice Motorsports. But, yeah, I just wanted to shout out Nikita Johnson. He really led every single lap, if I'm not mistaken, and every time there was a caution that came his way, he was like, I'm still going to hold you guys off, and he did. So shout out to 17-year-old, his first series win in Indy NXT. So that's kind of a fun fact. Shows that driver development at young age, you can go really any route, Tanner, and it shows that a lot of guys go the NASCAR route, but a guy like Nikita Johnson's well on his way to IndyCar if he keeps it up.
Yeah, definitely. And if we look here at the rundown for that race, we actually have Salvador de Alba, who actually has gone both routes. He runs full-time, or, well, not maybe full-time, but he's won multiple championships in the NASCAR Mexico Series, which we will be covering here on Grid Rising here in the near future as their series begins to heat up for 2026. And he's also a full-time competitor in Indy NXT. So a lot of very cool stories developing here in the development pipelines of multiple racing series. But Matthew, let's talk about the Cars Tour, which had a very, we'll call it explosive debut to their season. So what do you got for us from Southern National?
Absolutely. I'll bring you some of the facts about the Southern National event. So the ZMAX Cars Tour kicked off its season at Southern National Motorsports Park. Love to see that track, by the way, especially the legend car racing's great there. With a fulsome fence supply, 125 for the late model stock cars, as well as the KevinSaysYes.com 100 for the pro late models. The event had neither of the 2025 champions of Landon Lewis or Ben Mayer, because both of them were actually Nice Motorsports teammates at the St. Pete NASCAR Truck Series race. So I thought that was pretty cool. The pro late model race had North Carolina native Mason Walters take home the checkered flag in that same number 6 machine that won the title last season. So Walters put a ton of pressure on runner-up finisher Keelan Harvick in his first race with Toyota Racing Development and got around him with less than 5 laps to go. This was his 4th ever Cars Tour Pro late model race. So still bringing that number 6 to victory lane, whether it's Ben Mayer in that car or whether it was Mason Walters. And in a very impressive top 5, if you look at this, Guys like London McKenzie, an incredible legend car racer. Max Reeves, who's a future ARCA champion, a Joe Gibbs Racing prodigy. And then Trayton Lapsovich came in with a 5th place finish as well. I believe he was in the 67 car, which is affiliated, I believe, with the number 6 car as well. So wanted to shout out that impressive race. The other races where it did get a little bit chaotic here, Tanner. So for the late model stock cars, we saw Caden Quapple's first full-time season in a junior motorsports late model stock car, obviously taking over for Connor Hall. And then obviously Carson used to race in that car as well, his older brother. But Quapple started off very poorly that's probably the nicest way to put it. He needed to take a provisional to even get really into the event after initially qualifying 31st of 33 cars. Not great when you're in junior motorsports equipment. So he ended up starting 29th. However, it didn't stop him at all from making his way to the front. There was some controversy that put Doug Barnes Jr. into the wall, battling for the lead, which I know you alluded to that. We'll touch on that for a second. Quapple did hold off Lee Pulliam, which, as you know, he will be making his O'Reilly debut with junior motorsports coming up to get into victory lane. So for the 3rd time with junior motorsports and the 2nd time under the Cars Tour banner, Caden Quapple is a race winner. Like I had just mentioned, there was some controversy that ensued when Barnes Jr. needed to be separated from Quapple's car at the end of the race in victory lane. Barnes was visibly upset. I know Carson from Door Bumper Clear and obviously the Cars Tour, they were all playing security, the Quapple family, after that incident. Quapple said it was a racing deal, and he admitted it was his fault and that he was sorry. Barnes said he got ran into the wall and, quote, you think somebody in that equipment like that and a team like that would race with more respect. I guess I was wrong. That is a quote from Doug Barnes Jr. And then just to round out the top 5 here, Chad McCumbee and Carson Lofton. Also shout out guys like Jared Fryer and Landon S. Huffman, Trayton Lapsovich, Carson Brown. A lot of talented names in this field. But I don't really have a question here, but I want to throw it to you, Tanner. What did you think about that? That's unfortunately the attention that the Cars Store got was Doug Barnes Jr. Pretty much trying to fight Caden Quapple in some way, shape, or form.
I will say I thought that Quapple could have given him some more room there on the exit of that corner. I don't really understand why he just completely fenced the guy twice coming down the straightaway. I felt that was very excessive, but at the end of the day, I just found the whole situation comical. They physically removed Doug Barnes Jr. from the situation. He was going out with the, let me at him. They were pulling him away like a little brother after a heated game of basketball in the backyard. So found that quite entertaining. I mean, here's the thing. Stock car racing has a long history of fisticuffs being involved. So me personally, I don't think that this is necessarily bad attention. I think it just shows that these drivers come out here and compete and expect to win because it's their lifeblood. It's what they do to earn money. And I find it, somewhat admirable that they're willing to, lay it all out on the line for our entertainment. And when they feel that they've been wronged, sometimes they just need to, take matters into their own hands. So, personally, I like seeing it every now and again. I don't like to see it every weekend, but also, people getting into each other every weekend. So it's sometimes a bit of an inevitable conclusion. So at the end of the day, I don't find this to be a negative in any way for Cars Tour. I think this is, I wouldn't call it good publicity for them, but it is publicity for them. And, your mileage can vary on whether that is good or not to have, but it was all spawned from action on the racetrack. And frankly, I think that it's better that drivers get into fights over that kind of stuff than, silly stuff like, oh, well, he made a bad tweet about me, or, something about that. Oh, he said something mean about me in an interview. I don't care. Why don't you go do something about it? So with all that said, we'll be leaving the Cars Tour in the past and moving on to ARCA West, which made their trip to Kern Raceway. So, Matthew, what ended up going on out west?
Gotcha. I just wanted to shout out really quick to Doug Barnes Jr., also 88 car. At least he didn't have a wall where he would have air dugged it and cannonballed on the car. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was 5-6 years ago where Doug Barnes Jr. ended up getting suspended because he jumped on the hood of a vehicle. So you have to look that up. He's got a lot of subscribers now on YouTube. I believe it's like 69 or 70,000. So I wanted to shout that out. But yes, I just wanted for Doug Barnes Jr. Finished third. But yeah, the ARCA West Oil Workers 150 at one of the best and most underrated racetracks out there, in my opinion, Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway, kicked off the 2026 season. The race saw the return of some notable drivers, including multiple-time champion Sean Hingorani, Haley Deegan, multiple-time race winner, Mason Massey, another driver who has raced in trucks, O'Reilly. Massey has never competed in ARCA West, but he did, like I just mentioned, Truck Series, O'Reilly Series, a lot of starts before dropping down into the ARCA West with the Billy McAnally number 19 team. Superstar Jade Advidian, she started on pole in just her third ever ARCA West start, so I want to shout out her. However, that didn't really last long at all. She led for about 3 turns before Sean Hingorani in his first race back took the lead, and he really just did not look back at all. Sean put belt to butt on the entire field, leading 136 laps before eventually losing the lead to Mason Massey. Mason Massey ended up leading, the last 31 laps, and it wasn't really easy for him. He survived multiple overtime restarts to become the 30th driver ever to win in their series debut, according to the broadcasters. Eric Nascimento, sorry if I mispronounced your name, he finished second. Taylor Mayhew, we talked about him last week on Grid Rising, finished third in his debut. Trevor Huddleston, champion in that sport, and then Sean Hingorani, another champion, rounded out the top 5, where drivers like Haley Deegan, Joey Less, Jade Avdizian, Gavin Ray, and Cole Denton rounded out the top 10. And then there's other notable names there. Jaden Reyna back in the sport. Robbie Keneally Racing had a rough day over there. And then obviously, if you race on NASCAR 25, just pointing it out, a lot of those drivers are in the game. So make sure you check them out, give them a follow on social media as well. They're trying to make it. So that's where you start ARCA West. So I only really have one question for you, Tanner. It's about Mr. Mason Massey. How do you feel about him seeing this 29-year-old kid, or adult, he's older than us, 29-year-old Mason Massey?
Apparently I'm a kid.
We're still children over here. But yeah, the 29-year-old adult Mason Massey dropped down to ARCA West and win in his debut with the Billy McAnally Racing Team in almost an attempt to rebirth his career.
I mean, I feel like at this point, given his extensive career in both O'Reilly,
Well, it was exciting.
O'Reilly and trucks, I think any hopes of him having like a legitimate shot at a great riding cup are probably long gone at this point, unfortunately for him. But if he's just trying to regain his confidence and, get back to a certain level of competitiveness to hopefully earn someday a good truck or O'Reilly ride, then I think that he's probably got a good path to getting there if he can go out and dominate ARCA West. I think the ARCA West field is pretty stacked right now, all things considered. I mean, obviously you've got former super champion Sean Hingorani in the field. I believe Trevor Huddleston was the champion last year. Taylor Mayhew, while young, still has a lot of talent. Haley Deegan obviously had a very solid career in ARCA West prior to moving up to ARCA Main. And then further down the order, you've got Jade Avedissian, who I think is going to be one of the prospects we'll be talking about for years to come in stock car racing. And, I just think that with ARCA West being, we'll call it a little bit equipment shallow, I think that he has an extremely good opportunity to go out there and win every week in a Bill McAnally car. So with all that said, if he's, looking to reset his career and become, a solid truck or O'Reilly lifer, he's on a good path to do that. But at the end of the day, if his intent is to, use this as a platform to hopefully springboard himself into cup contention. I just don't really see that. But there's no shame in being an O'Reilly or truck lifer. I just think that, obviously I feel like a lot of kids dream when they first get to a car that I'm going to go win like the Daytona 500 and not the beef it's what's for dinner 300. But at the end of the day, you're still one of the 50 best drivers on earth if you're in the NASCAR O'Reilly or Truck Series, at least in terms of stock car racing. Let me be very clear. I don't want anybody coming at me talking about Lance Stroll and all this other nonsense. So, with all that said, Massey dropping down might be a good career move for him, even if it feels like a little bit of a step backwards, especially after last year where he spent some time with, in my opinion, pretty modest equipment with Alpha Prime Racing. Didn't really feel like he showed a whole lot in that equipment, but he does have some top 10s in the O'Reilly Series to his name at Atlanta, New Hampshire twice. But his Truck Series results kind of leave a lot to be desired. And I just think that maybe if he had a little bit better equipment, he might perform a little bit better. But what about you, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm all for a lot of guys who, I've always said this, the ones who aren't as successful at the upper levels, I like when they drop down and are able to contend. Like, I'm not as big of a fan when you see guys like, say, Kyle Larson or William Byron race in O'Reilly and trucks. But if you have guys who, like a few years ago, like if Justin Haley were to do it, or say someone like Corey LaJoie, who they don't really win a lot at Cup or never really won a Cup. I know Haley has a win, but just mentioning those guys, I like to see when they drop down. Riley Herbst is another example. So for Mason Massey, I'm all for it. He's in the best equipment, in my opinion, in the ARCA West Series. In a year where I think equipment's going to play a big factor, I know he's teammates with Haley Deegan, and I think that'll help play a factor in her, too, being well, and I think she can contend for victories. Sean Hingorani kind of showed up and showed that he still has it in that Toyota equipment, and then Trevor Huddleston, obviously, past champion, knows how to get it done. But for Mason Massey, I'm all for it. I'm interested to see. Phoenix is coming up as we record this live in a few days. I believe him and another driver, I don't know who it is, both have the number 19 since it's a combination race. So they don't allow letters. So I believe the Billy McAnally Racing number 19 has to switch their number. So I don't know what they're going to do. That's what I saw on social media. Maybe Mason Massey can go get a win in another number. We've seen drivers race for different teams, numbers, manufacturers. I know Austin Terrio is a prime example. I believe the year he won the ARCA title, he raced with all different manufacturers. I believe he raced with Toyota, Chevrolet, and Ford in the same season. I believe he was with Ken Schrader Racing at the time when he got it done. So anything's possible. Just as long as you're getting seat time and racing, you can contend. And then if you're in a Billy McAnally car, I think without a doubt you can contend. And I want to shout out another comment from Jason Fuller. ARCA West is underrated. I think the West Coast produces significant talent, whether it's Kyle Larson, Jesse Love, Jade Avedizian, and then there's so many more guys that came from the West and gals that also came from the West there too. So, yeah, I think that's all I got about ARCA West. Make sure you tune in Thursday. Big field for the Phoenix event. And we'll throw it over to a very, very important race, too, I want you to touch on. We're going from 4 wheels, Tanner. We're going to 2 wheels now. Supercross.
Indeed. And before I do that, just want to clarify, Terrio in 2017 did, in fact, run races for 3 different manufacturers with Ken Schrader Racing, one at Daytona in the season opener with a Chevy, and ran that again at Talladega later on in the schedule. After that, did a good bit of the schedule in a Ford. Didn't finish any worse than 9th outside of the finale there, but won 3 races in the Ford and won 3 of the 4 races that he ran in a Toyota that year as well. Very clinical run by Austin Terrio in 2017. That is for certain.
So I didn't look it up. I was right somehow off the top of my dome. I didn't even know.
Looks like, I saw that Jason said that ARCA West is underrated. I kind of agree. A lot of good talent in that series right now. But as Matthew teased over a minute ago, I do believe that it is time to get into some dirt. So, after the Odyssey, that was the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, and the spectacle that was the Daytona 500, the World Center of Racing hosted its last major event of the winter by allowing the world-class Supercross riders to rip around the Daytona infield. In the 250cc main event, Kawasaki's Seth Hamaker wedged himself in front on the inside to grab the whole shot, and after sustaining an early challenge from defending division champion Joe Shimoda, the 25-year-old rider out of Bainbridge, Pennsylvania, maintained a healthy gap to his competition en route to a wire-to-wire victory, his first of 2026. Shimoda suffered a fall late while running in second, going through the sand, and ended up settling for a fourth-place finish after rejoining the race, while Cole Davies and Drew Adams joined Hamaker on the podium. In addition to that, we had the 450cc main event, which may have well have been over before it even started because Eli Tomac was in the field, and in predictable fashion, he went out there, put belt to butt, and absolutely wiped the floor with the field, winning the race and taking the top step of the podium. And in a very rare moment, and I didn't even know this until last night when I was rewatching the race, I noticed that he may have busted his tooth after the race because he was trying to lift the trophy up, and it literally came detached and bopped him in the mouth. I didn't see him spit a tooth out or anything like that, but he was talking like he lost a tooth. So hopefully that isn't going to cause him further complication and nothing of actual harm actually took place. But with all that said, we are going to transition to the final moments of our program. I'm talking, of course, about the grid shining moment, where we turn a spotlight to one of the drivers or one of the teams that we saw have immense success at some point during the weekend, whatever that actually means to that driver or team. So, Matthew, I'm going to start with you. What's your grid shining moment?
Oof, it's such a tough one, to be honest with you. I had a couple things in mind. Obviously, guys like SVG going out and winning, Elaine Riggs in the Truck Series, and then obviously from that perspective, watching guys like Landon Lewis and Ben Mayer. And then Nikita Johnson, I think, is a big one too, winning at 17 years old. But I think overall, my one shining moment is just the event at St. Pete, I feel. And then obviously there's another one, but I want you to touch on it. I believe Supercross. I'm going to wink at you through the camera. I think there's one important thing that happened over there. But yeah, in terms of just the St. Pete event, I love the idea of NASCAR being diverse when it comes to the tracks, and then being able to bring a product on a street course for the Truck Series and partner it with a series that gets more attention, which is the NTT IndyCar Series. And just to have that, I think it was truly awesome. And just to be able to shine a light on a lot of talented race car drivers. The Ford drivers did incredible in that event for the Truck Series. But I would say, Tanner, that's probably my overall one shining moment. I know I mentioned 3 or 4. There was just so much that went on. Mason Massey obviously winning his debut. And then to Supercross and Daytona, obviously. Stuff happened over there with some of the best to ever do it at Daytona specifically. But those are my 47 one shining moments, Tanner. I'm interested to hear what you got.
Absolutely. So, for me, I think that I'm going to be flipping back over to Supercross. And yes, for the second out of 3 weeks, I'm going to be shining a light on Eli Tomac. The KG veteran moved himself clear into second place in the all-time wins list at the 450cc level. The man has been on a tear since taking on the 2026 schedule with the Red Bull KTM team. And he's showing no signs of slowing down, even at the age of 33, which does sound a lot like that famous tweet from many years ago that was like, the oldest player in the league, it's a miracle that he's still out there at 32 years old. It's definitely giving that. But with all that said, like I said, the man showing no signs of slowing down, especially at Daytona. He has, in fact, broken Richard Petty's record for the most what is essentially a main event win at Daytona International. He won his 8th race at the Daytona infield, and let me tell you, that course, if you go back and watch that event, was exceptionally tricky. A lot of technical sections, a lot of variance in the turns, and a lot of different types of turf to drive on as well. I mean, you had to go from soil to sand, and it just got very complicated for a lot of drivers. Obviously, as I mentioned, Joe Shimoda ended up having a fall there in the 250 race, but Eli Tomac managed to absolutely throttle the field yet again. And I mean, obviously, the championship in that sport is a little bit silly at the moment with their playoff style format, similar to the supercars and how NASCAR used to do it. But he'd be my pick right now to win the championship. But with that said, we'll be moving to our final segment, and that is Weapon of the Week, where we talk about a driver who maybe got into a couple things more often than they probably should have, and it ultimately brought a negative spotlight on them, more or less. Matthew, let's start with you. Who's your Weapon of the Week?
Just want to point out a comment from
Jason popping back in here. Dario and James on track racing each other was great. I couldn't agree more. I really hope we see more of Dario going forward, and Hinch for that matter, if he has the time.
Yeah, he's a little busy as being a broadcaster, right? It was funny. It reminds me a lot of Parker Kligerman doing some of the interviews in a racing suit. I like to see that. Weapon of the Week. We got to get a graphic for it. I think this is a fun idea. There were a few, I think more than usual, but it's tough. I'm going to have to go I think we're going to agree for the second week in a row. I think Corey Day, once again, was probably my Weapon of the Week, mainly because the kid's got so unbelievable amount of talent, yet completely took out Connor Zillich just cutting across the track. I know he's young. I know rookies make mistakes, but it wasn't the first time. I don't think he got into anyone, and it certainly won't be the last. So I think for him, there were some things in ARCA West, a lot of chaos too, bumper. And then obviously in the car store, we saw the Doug Barnes Jr. get squeezed into the wall by the eventual winner, Caden Quapple. But I would say probably Corey Day was my Weapon of the Week. Not as bad as I think last week, though, in some way, besides the whole wrecking Connor Zillich. But Zillich, I think, misjudged it last year at Watkins Glen and took out SVG. I think you can argue there's similarities there, but there's also differences with how that occurred. So, yeah, that's probably my one major Weapon of the Week was just the Corey Day incident, specifically with Connor Zillich there when they were running for a top 5 position.
Yeah, kind of hard to disagree. Obviously, you had some other drivers with, we'll call it a higher hit rate, and Chris Wright and Christian Eckes in the Truck Series race at St. Pete. But I just feel like when you look at the incidents that both Eckes and Wright were in, it was clearly just, hard racing gone wrong. Whereas with Day's just lack of spatial awareness, just completely cleaning another car out in a section of the track that it was just genuinely unnecessary. And then, like I mentioned, like last week, to come out and lie about it, it's just, it leaves a poor taste in your mouth. We'll say that. You just expect someone who is going through the Hendrick pipeline to have a little bit more maturity and a little bit more accountability. And the kid is just showing neither of those on the racetrack or in his post-race interviews. It's, not really advantageous for the series itself to have a driver just come in and completely cause chaos like this right away due to his inexperience. As we said last week, you would love to see someone like him come into this series and, have a little bit more experience, a little bit more, seat time in stock cars on asphalt before diving headfirst into the O'Reilly Series. But maybe Rick Hendrick knows better than I do. But at the same time, he's going out there and wrecking other Rick Hendrick cars, and I don't think that Rick Hendrick should be too happy about that. And as I saw somebody post on Twitter not too long ago, they were like, at this point, Rick, this is your driver causing all these accidents and causing other people money, and you brought Ross Chastain in and had a talk with him for less. Maybe it's time that you start to have a talk with Corey before this gets a little too out of hand. But with all that said, that is looks to be the end of our show. Matthew, how about you close it out for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Great viewership. We really appreciate everyone from X, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all tuning in too. Most importantly, we couldn't do it without our Patreon investors, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and Nico, as well as our YouTube super chats and buy me a coffee. Aloha to Jason. Thank you for him. And then everyone else involved. We really appreciate it. If you're interested in becoming one of those, it doesn't hurt to reach out. We're on pretty much every social media you can imagine. If you want any sponsorship opportunities as well, it doesn't hurt to give us a ring. We'd love to talk to anyone or pretty much everyone about all that stuff. And make sure, like I just had mentioned, we're active everywhere, whether it's Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, we're on Twitch. Most of our viewers here today are from X and YouTube. We really appreciate everyone for tuning in. As a reminder to all of you, Grid Tonight will be live on air on Wednesday. And also comment Jason Counterzillis did have indeed 2 great races ruined by other drivers. So Grid Tonight, I know they always have a lot to talk about. Kobe, Matt, and Josh over there, especially with MotoGP going on, lawsuit stuff in NASCAR. So a lot of stuff going on over there. So as a reminder too, I want to say don't be afraid to do something great. And just want to reach out and just say, I hit the button too many times. Thank you all for tuning in to episode number 3 of Grid Rising. We really do appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time.